What's going on, family, and welcome back to another episode of Dragons in America. Are you, the dragons found here in America? Let me know what you think. Leave a note in the comments. We're talking episode number 62, Indian Hebrews. Let's go, man. I'm hyped for this one. Welcome back. Let's do what we do best. We're staying in check, searching for the Melchizedek. Dragon canoe in the building. Hello.
These are also proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah king of Judah copied out. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. The heaven for height, and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer. Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king, and stand not in the place of great men. For better it is that it be said unto thee, Come up hither, than that thou shouldest be put lower in the presence of the prince whom thine eyes have seen. Go not forth hastily to strive, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof, when thy neighbor hath put thee to shame. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another, lest he that heareth it put thee to shame, and thine infamy turn not away. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refresheth the soul of his masters. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone.
Let's get into it. We're talking French and Indian War. This North American extension of the global 7 Years' War saw intense fighting over control of the Ohio River Valley. Sides and alliances include the British, who were supported by the Iroquois Confederacy, which was initially allied with Great Britain. So the British and the Iroquois made an alliance. And on the other side, you got the French, who allied with the Shawnee, Delaware, and some Seneca, including the Mingo faction of the Iroquois. So again, it's a lot of moving pieces. It's a real deal chessboard going on right here. And this all builds up to the War of 1812. So we're just going to connect the dots, see where we go. Conflict number 2, Pontiac's War. Following the French defeat, British policies led to an indigenous uprising. Many Indians were angered by the British reducing the price for furs, building forts on tribal land, and increasing settler encroachment. The Native Confederacy consisted of the Ottawa, Delaware, Shawnee, and Seneca tribes. On the other side, you had the British, who were involved in the effort to control the region. So keep in mind, Delaware, Shawnee, Senecas, because those are the real ones right there. You're going to see their names popping up a lot in this. Take note. Conflict number 3, and probably the most famous, the American Revolution. This war saw Indian tribes aligning with either the British or the American colonists, often based on who they believed would best protect their lands. Sides, you got the British, who were supported by the majority of the Iroquois Confederacy, as we saw. Some Shawnee and other Indian groups hoping to stem American expansion. The opposition, the American colonists, backed by some Oneida and Tuscarora factions of the Iroquois Confederacy. So, again, the Iroquois playing both sides as usual. In the American Revolution, it's saying that the Shawnee and many other groups sided with the British in this specific instance. We're just Connecting the dots. Conflict number 4, Northwest Indian War. After the revolution, the Treaty of Paris failed to protect Indian interests, leading to further conflict as settlers moved into the Ohio country. You had the Western Confederacy, led by figures like Blue Jacket and Little Turtle, including the Shawnee, Delaware, and others. Again, the Shawnee and Delawares, you don't really want to mess with them. They come in with that battle tomahawk. United States fought to defeat the Indian resistance and acquire their land. So again, this is just building up for Tecumseh, War of 1812. As we know by now, conflict number 5, the War of 1812. This conflict saw the British and their Indian allies attempt to curb American expansion. This time you had the British supported by Tecumseh's Confederacy, which we know at this point it was Tecumseh versus everybody, including the Shawnee, some Delaware, and factions of the Iroquois, specifically the Mingo. The United States was allied with certain groups, including some Seneca and Delaware. So again, at this point, the lines start to blur. Everyone's choosing sides. Man, let's get into it. It's kind of crazy to think I went back through the archives, get a lot of this dropped too, and included it with some of the new stuff that I came across. But if you go back and watch like episode 27 through like 33, I mean, you can get an even deeper understanding of the Shawnees conflicts, the Iroquois, their connection with the other Indian tribes. I mean, I was kind of amazed at how much information I had acquired to this point. But it is what it is. We still rolling. Let's get it. The influence of the Iroquois on both the Shawnees and the Delawares was nevertheless strong until the outbreak of the French and Indian War, when both groups disregarded the Six Nations of the Iroquois and allied themselves with the French. Even after they ceased to be politically dominated by the Iroquois League, both Shawnees and Delawares continued to associate with and exchange cultural elements with the Mingo Iroquois. These Mingos were young Iroquois people who had gone to the Ohio and Indiana country. I want you to take a look at this map just to get some orientation and see how much motion was really going on at this time. War after war, conflict after conflict. But we're going to dive a little deeper into the Shawnees. The Shawanoe were of very wandering and warlike habit. Their earliest historical habitat appears to have been on the middle of the Savannah River. But before the end of the 17th century, we find a portion of them, apparently the main body, occupying the basin of the Cumberland River in Tennessee. About the year 1692, most of these remaining in South Carolina moved northward and settled upon the upper Delaware River. Up to about the year 1730, the Shawanoe still had a town on Savannah River near Augusta, from which they were finally driven by the Cherokees. A part of the Shawanoe joined the Creek Confederacy, and up to the beginning of the last century, and probably until the final removal to the west, retained their distinct language. Those settled upon the Cumberland were afterward expelled by the Cherokee and Chickasaw, and retired to the upper waters of the Ohio, under protection of the Delaware, who had given refuge to the original immigrants from South Carolina. It's a lot to take in, but do your best. The Shawnee were special. They had a lot of enemies though. I mean, but that should tell you something. We're talking ancient antagonisms and jealousies here. The Shawnees also took a leading part in the French and Indian War, Pontiac's War, the American Revolution, and the War of 1812. We already got that. We're talking Shawnee, we're talking Tecumseh and them. In 1793, a considerable band settled in Missouri upon lands granted by the Spanish government. So they didn't work with the French, the English, the Spanish, you name it. But their top op is the Iroquois and the Cherokee, the Six Nations. As a result of successive sales and removals, all that remain of the tribe are now established in Indian Territory, about one half being incorporated with the Cherokee Nation. Here's another one giving you a bird's eye view of the orientation of the tribes and what's becoming Eastern North America in 1765. As you can see, the Shawnees, Delawares dominate a small portion, Ohio River, the Chickasaw Creeks and Choctaw pretty much own the South, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Cherokee got like the Appalachian Mountains, and then to the east along the coast is mostly what we know to be the 13 colonies or whatever. Just a quick little background on the map. We're back to the Shawnees. Among the newcomers to Tuckabatchee were refugees who, according to a late 18th century visitor, had been almost destroyed by the Iroquois and the Hurons. These refugees were probably Shawnees forced out of the Ohio River by Iroquois warfare. Among Eastern Indians, Shawnees were well known for their ability to move easily among disparate native groups. They bridged the cultural divide that often separated native people from different regions. So as you can see, the Shawnees weren't just like a normal tribe. I mean, they were facing serious opposition here. But the Shawnees had prophets and they just moved different. Prophets or gifted persons who can foretell future events have long been recognized among the Shawnees, Delawares, Kickapoos, and other Algonquian tribes. The 18th and 19th centuries, a time of military defeats, forced removals, and constant unrest for all of these groups, was also marked by the rise of great prophets. Tecumseh dreamt of a pan-Indian state, even if he had been able to somehow make the numerous tribes forget their ancient antagonisms and jealousies. Euro-American technology and military discipline would have prevailed in the end, basically saying they didn't have enough weapons or manpower with the divide and conquer technique. So Tecumseh was trying to rally the troops. Following their defeat at Tippecanoe by Harrison's forces on November 1811, the Ohio Shawnees, under the leadership of Tecumseh and the Prophet, joined the British in the War of 1812. So again, it's all connected here. We just gotta do what we gotta do. We gonna put it together for you, OJ. Alright, here's where it starts to get trippy. It starts to get real tripped out here. I think I got it. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Leave a note in the comments. They saying right here, this Kachina doll represents a Pueblo warrior known as Shakwaina. The dark-featured Shakwaina may reflect tribal memories of Estevanico, a Moor who accompanied Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca on his trek across the Southwest and later perished in a clash with Zunis in 1539. So, they're trying to say this is Estevanico, or reflects the tribal memory of him, who they're also saying is a Moor. But look, let's keep it moving, man. I got more. We're connecting the dots here, man. Let me know what you think. The African American experience in the American West began in 1528, when a Spanish exploring party shipwrecked off the Texas coast in the Gulf of Mexico, they say. 4 survivors of that mishap wandered across Texas, the American Southwest, and northern Mexico, until they were rescued by Spanish soldiers in 1536. One of this quartet of conquistadors was an African slave named Estevanico. Some historians have speculated that Estevanico, who was from northern Africa, was brown and Arab, or rather than black. Most scholars, however, have concluded that he was the latter, and official Spanish records refer to him as a Negro. So now obviously this is hijacked, because It just gets so confusing. Unless I'm tripping, y'all let me know. So is Estevan the black dude on the left on the horse, or is Estevan the Indian dude on the right with the bow and arrow? Y'all let me know. Cause some say he's a Moor, some say he's a Negro, some say he's an American Indian. So I don't know, man. You let me know. I'm trying to figure this out. Such was the experience of Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, a member of an early Spanish expedition that came to grief along the coast in 1528. That November, Cabeza de Vaca and several other shipwrecked Spaniards cast up on an island near what is now the Texas-Louisiana border. Man, the jury's still out on this one. Who is this dude? Is Estevanico this dude? Or is he the dude in the back on the horse? Is Estevanico Spanish? Or is he a Moor? Or is he an Indian? I have no idea. I can't figure this out. It makes no sense. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Leave a note in the comments. He considered this a form of slavery. We're talking about the shipwrecked Spaniards got captured by the Indians. We're talking Estevanico. We're talking Cabeza de Vaca. He considered this a form of slavery. So again, take that into account. The Indians assumed that these otherworldly Spanish, so they say, Cabeza de Vaca and company were thus among the first Europeans to enter into the rich spiritual life of the American Indians. They also bore witness to the deep devotion of Indian parents for their children. So we're about to segue into the Pocahontas situation. We're just connecting the dots here. Let me know what y'all think, man. It gets deep. Let's go. So here we get into that Chief Powhatan, aka King Powhatan, where he sets the stage to flay John Smith. But take a look at the picture and we'll get into the text at the top and the bottom, but just look how big they got King Powhatan in the back. Was he a giant? You let me know. Leave a note in the comments. So let's get into the text at the top of the photo saying, "The country we now call Virginia beginneth at Cape Henry from Roanoke, 60 miles, were Sir Walter Raleigh's plantation. And because the people differ very little from them of Powhatan in anything, I have inserted these figures in this place because of the conveniency." So let's break that down here. So the country we now call Virginia, where Sir Walter Raleigh's plantation existed, saying that they differed very little from them of Powhatan, insinuating there were similarities between whoever lived on this so-called plantation and the surrounding Indians, specifically King Powhatan. We're just connecting the dots here. What's even more interesting, I kind of gave it away saying King Powhatan, but he's referred to as a king rather than a chief. I don't know if that has any significance, but it's interesting. Saying King Powhatan commands John Smith to be slain. His daughter Pocahontas begs his life, his thankfulness, and how he subjected 39 of their kings. So again, there's something going on here between these Indians and rulership and what it truly means to be a chief or king, or if it's on a bigger or grander scale than they make it seem in the pictures. You let me know. Let's get some more background drop. As a paramount chief with control over dozens of tribes and tens of thousands of people, Powhatan was at the time one of the most powerful Indian leaders in North America. If his daughter, who was still a child, acted kindly towards Smith and his fellow colonists, she was surely doing so at the behest of her father, who alternated threats with inducements in the hope of persuading the intruders to defer to him as their overlord. So Powhatan was the king of kings when it came to the Indians in Virginia, the most powerful, and he wanted the colonists to refer to him as their overlord, so he had motion, no doubt about it. One of the boldest uprisings occurred in southern New England in 1675, when the Wampanoag chief Metacomet, referred to by colonists as King Philip. So the Wampanoag chief, aka Metacomet, take note of that name right there, also referred to as King Philip. Like I said, really interesting that these chiefs, aka caciques, chiefs, kings, are all referenced in different light. In this instance, same time period, late 1600s, Chief Powhatan and Chief Metacomet both referred to as kings. Metacomet referred to as King Philip. We got to get into that. We got to connect the dots here. That's interesting. Carries on to say, some war parties seized hostages for the same reason that whites often held Indians, to sell or ransom. So again, insinuating the whites sold the Indians. We're talking slavery here. Indians to sell or ransom. Heirlooms of the Northwest Coast. We're getting into Malaspina's expedition commissioned by Spain's King Carlos IV in 1790, was in part an effort to protect and extend the Spanish Empire, but it also reflected a growing scientific curiosity about native peoples during the Enlightenment. Long after the Spanish Empire crumbled, Malaspina's cultural finds, including the Tlingit treasures shown here, endured in a collection at Madrid's Museo de America.
En este museo custodiamos aproximadamente 30.000 piezas que incluyen desde arqueología prehispánica, piezas de arte colonial o bien etnografía de América, que nos habla de los distintos momentos de la historia del continente americano y de los pueblos que todavía viven ahí hoy en día. A través de las actividades y del contacto con las comunidades de origen y de los países de origen, del patrimonio que custodiamos en este museo, desde aquí lo que intentamos es generar una profundización del conocimiento y una comprensión de las realidades distintas de los pueblos americanos con el pueblo español para promover el desarrollo de los pueblos juntos.
We'll take a look at some of these artifacts. We got the carved headdress decorated with copper and shell on our left, and to our right, a ceremonial club adorned with human hair and feather quills. Peep this here. Talking Tlingit treasures. Are we talking Tlingit or Tangut? You let me know.
Afrodescendientes hubo muchas resistencias y oposición al sistema establecido, que ejemplifica, por ejemplo, el magnífico retrato de don Francisco de Arobi y de sus hijos, que representa la fuga de esclavos en territorios de frontera y la conformación de palenques o de aldeas y cacicazgos independientes, ¿no?, como forma de resistencia de la situación virreinal.
Generación tras generación también ha habido pervivencias culturales.
All right, for this final section, we're going to get into what we call ethnology, or the portrait of the people. We're talking Lewis and Clark. By the last day of November 1804, okay, remember the prophet predicts a solar eclipse in 1806. To the west lay the Mandan village of Minnetonka, a companionable cluster of mound-shaped earth-covered lodges. To the east rose an isolated compound of wooden huts, freshly built by a group of explorers led by Captains Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. During the next 4 centuries, other African Americans visited or lived in what later became the western half of the United States. Like Estevanico, were slaves of Spanish officials, explorers, and settlers. A few were fur trappers and traders. They too brought Americans of African ancestry with them as slaves or servants. So see, here they try to mix it up, but from what we've gathered so far, I think we can pick up the pieces of the puzzle and put it back together and see clearly. These latter travelers performed much of the work necessary for making pioneering expeditions successful. They cooked, herded cattle, nursed children, hunted, built shelters, and performed a host of other required functions. So again, they did all the hunting, they did all the cooking, herded all the cattle. That should tell you right there that they were comfortable in their environment. They knew what they were doing. Just as William Clark took on his duties as superintendent, the Indian situation in the East began to unravel. British invasion and gave credence to the fears that Indian groups would join the British. His eyes and ears to the potentially dangerous gathering of the tribes at the Prophetstown in Ohio and at various points on the Great Lakes. So William Clark is worried now, like Tecumseh and them gonna team up with the British. At that point, he don't know what's gonna happen, because he could be attacked on all fronts. Initially, Tecumseh insisted that his only aim was to gather the Shawnees, but by 1807, large contingents of Potawatomis, Wyandots, Ottawas, Ojibwas, Sacs, and Foxes began making pilgrimage. Such movement and the waves of rumors that accompanied it sent Indian agents. So again, Tecumseh had to worry about agents. He had to worry about Lewis and Clark, the French, the British, the Spanish, other tribes, you name it. Moravian missionaries living with the Delawares and Wyandots nervously described Tecumseh as the oracle of the day. They reported crazed Delawares burning people at the stake, looking for their victims among Christianized Indians. So again, you let me know what you think, man, but it was going down in Prophet's Town. The Senecas refused to recognize as binding a treaty signed under duress by a mere majority. Members of Morgan's Grand Order circulated petitions on behalf of the Senecas. So remember, in the beginning, the Senecas, the Delawares, the Shawnees were together. By now, they were split, and Morgan's Grand Order and Henry Rowe Schoolcraft were federal agents who pretty much used divide and conquer techniques to create treaties amongst the other tribes that encroached on each other's land. As more and more researchers took to the field in the 19th century, it gave way to what we call ethnology, or the comparative study of tribal cultures. When the Smithsonian Institution established the Bureau of Ethnology to promote systematic fieldwork and compile reports from around the continent. Here's where we learn about John Wesley Powell. Said in the past videos, one of the top ops, they went around destroying mounds and sacred sites and taking what they wanted and bringing it back to the Smithsonian. Powell was largely self-taught and joined by Frank Hamilton Cushing, who joined in an important Smithsonian expedition in the Southwest. We got that in a couple videos back, which together offered a broad view of American Indian culture. Again, this is the Bureau of Ethnology's report. In the bottom right, we have John Wesley Powell, but you gotta sit back and think, like, are you gonna get your history from him, or are you gonna find out for yourself? Because looking at this dude, it don't look like he gonna tell you the truth, man. You let me know, man. Bureau of Ethnology was created to throw you off the trail and to steal your artifacts. All right, in this final piece, we get a what in the Exodus moment. They pretty much break it down for you, give it right away at the end. Honored as a child of the sun, the same tribute Indians had offered more than 3 centuries earlier to Cabeza de Vaca and his Spanish companions, Estevanico and them, a magical plant which grew on a single mountain in the west, the flowers of which were the most beautiful in the world. So again, they're trying to connect Cabeza de Vaca, the Spanish Estevanico, to the Indians and this so-called child of the sun. Here is just basically a re-rock of Exodus, which I find very interesting. And like I like to say, we're just following the drinking gourd here. That coming out was the first step in a process of emergence that carried the Kiowa from the confining forests and mountains of the north to the limitless prospects of the southern plains. Along the way, they found a path to heaven at a spot Kiowas called Soai, or rock tree. We know the Most High is also referred to as a rock. It is our rock. The name Soai Tali, or rock tree boy, was honored in a fabled Kiowa youth who turned into a bear and chased his 7 sisters up the great tree. The deep grooves on its cliffs were the claw marks of the bear, whose sister eluded his grasp and entered the night sky as the stars of the Big Dipper. The name Rock Tree Boy thus gave young Mama Day a role in the emergence of his people, who claimed kinship with the stars and left the mountains to seek a home on the open plains. However tenuous their well-being, he wrote, however much they had suffered and would suffer again, they had found a way out of the wilderness. So again, we're just following the drinking gourd here. They found a way out of the wilderness. Are we talking Exodus, Book of Numbers? Are we talking Indians? You let me know, man. We back with another one. Happy to be here. Dragon Canoe in the building. We're just doing what we do best, staying in check, searching for the Melchizedek.